of you that know me and you're acutely aware that my youngest child is moderately autistic, that is level 2, middle of the autism spectrum, I'm going to ask you to bear with me while I point something out for you. If my son, being autistic, was able to get along in normal everyday society without any kind of support at all, without me needing to do anything special for him that I wouldn't have to do for any other kid, would I particularly much care that my son was autistic? Would I care? Would it matter to me? I think where it would matter to me a little, I would kind of go, hey, this is kind of cool or whatever, he's different or whatever, or I might go, wow, it's kind of odd that he's different and I don't really understand why. This is not something like where people have two different color eyes. For most of those folks, it really matters very little that that's true, even though there's something physically, hereditarily going on with that individual. And I kind of wanted to point out that that's typically what's going on with autism and things of that sort. I want to talk today on the idea of choice or chance, and that's a question on the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I'm Kurt, and today is Wednesday, the 5th of January of 2022. Welcome to everyone who's here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, on BitChute, and on CloutHub as well. And for that matter, anywhere else you may be seeing me today, and that probably will include this being posted on one of my favorite chats in minds.com, and that is the Let's Talk Autism chat, because I am somewhat intimately involved with an autistic person on a day-to-day basis. But welcome aboard one way or another. Glad to have you here. Remember, Rumble is my preferred platform. And so that's where I would prefer that folks check me out, but you can check me out other places as well. That's fine. Today, as I say, the subject is choice or chance, and I'm going to go ahead and go through my notes to kind of solidify what it is that I'm saying, and then we'll discuss things afterwards. It's such an obvious thing to me. You can't help where your family comes from. So whether you're black, Jewish, from India, Chinese, or whatever, is not a thing you asked for. You can't change the fact that your body wasn't designed to work the same way the majority's does. Are you autistic? Do you have Down syndrome? Or some other thing that makes you different? I'm not so sorry to tell folks this, but that was not a choice. And I put the not so in later thinking about it because I'm not sorry to tell you this. It's what you were born to be. I hear people every day making the argument that being gay or transgender or gender fluid or whatever is the same as what I just discussed. Let me make something plain. I think there are people out there who get great joy out of killing others, serial murderers, for example. I'm pretty sure the same applies to many rapists and pedophiles. They really enjoy doing that thing, given the opportunity so to do. I'm pretty sure the same applies to rapists and pedophiles. Sorry, just reread the same thing in my notes. Can it be argued that such people were potentially born that way? I think at least it's something we can't absolutely disqualify as a possibility. For my part, I'm very much unwilling to make a statement one way or another. You need to understand, I am not trying to say that homosexuality and transgenderism and gender fluidity and all of that are, quote, morally equal to murder or rape or anything of that kind, at least not on the face of it. Now, as a Christian, as it happens as a Christian, I make the argument they are. But here's the thing. Then again, in my mind, so is lust. Any sin is equal as far as I understand it. That's what I get. You can correct me if you can tell me how I'm wrong there. What I'm saying is, like it or not, there's no outward manifestation of any of the listed self-proclamations. That is, homosexuality, transgenderism, gender fluidity, or so many other such things, furries or whatever they choose to call themselves. If you're black, chances are good folks can see it. And the same is true for dwarves or little people or whatever they choose to be called. I'm not trying to pick on them. I don't know what the appropriate name is. And you can absolutely correct me if you find that I've said something incorrect where that's concerned. Though things like autism may not present physically, they're generally somewhat obvious even early on in life. I literally can look back at my son's earliest days and I can see autism in him from the earliest of days. You can say gayness and transgenderism and gender fluidity and so forth are the same as such things, but like serial killers and rapists, unless you argue they have no choice in how they act, you too can choose to act against what you claim is natural for you. So the point is, if a person is a kleptomaniac and it's hereditary or it's in their genes or whatever you want to say, they still have the opportunity to not act as such. And I'm not, again, trying to do a moral equivalence. What I'm trying to do is say they can change how they act. And if you consider that that's bad, then it's obvious that those people probably ought to do that. Can a Chinese person change his features by a simple act of will? He can go under the knife. He can wear makeup, he or she, but they can't just, I want to look white. They can't do that. And nor would I want to, by the way, if I was Chinese. And I'm not trying to say that I would. I think that it's perfectly acceptable to be Chinese. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But they can't change their features by a simple act of will. Can a person in the lineage of the Jews cease to be so? I'm sorry, but even if they change how they look, they can't change who they are. That's not, again, a bad thing. I'm not trying to argue it's a bad thing. I'm trying to say they can't change it. It's not changeable. That's not up for debate. Can a Down syndrome or autistic child do so? No. I mean, they can learn to deal with their world better, but that's about all they can do. How about a gay or transgender person, though? Can that person choose to not act gay, transgender, or whatever? Can they? So is it the same thing? It's time to face reality. There's a marked difference between choice and chance. And you can argue, again, we're done with the notes and I'm going to get on with what I'm talking about here, but you can argue that a gay person or a transgender, supposedly transgender person or a gender fluid person or whatever it happens to be is such as a result of heredity. But my answer to you is that does not mean they must act on it. If you take an autistic child in their early years to the appropriate medical professional and say, what do you think about this kid? And don't even tell them you think the kid is autistic, and they come back with diagnosis autism, what are you going to do? How are you going to respond to that? Are you going to say, they're faking it? No, you're not going to say that. There are marked behavioral and one could argue sort of input-output differences between them and others in the way they process their world. There are marked thinking differences, how they think and how they do things. Now, you can argue that that's true for just about anybody on planet Earth, and I'm not really in a position to disagree with you. But what I want for you to understand is when you say I'm gay, that's a proclamation. When an autistic person is found to be autistic, that's a diagnosis. The same for transgender, that's a proclamation. The same for gender fluid, proclamation. When you say that person is autistic, chances are you're not the one who made that decision, and neither are they, came to that conclusion. That's not how that worked. There's a substantial difference between someone who's gay and proclaims themselves gay, someone who's transgender and proclaims themselves so, somebody who's gender fluid and claims themselves so, and somebody who's autistic, Down syndrome, Chinese, Indian, Native American. Those things are genetic, inherent facts as far as we can tell. And even for the ones that you can't say that for, you can do a diagnosis and come to the conclusion that they're actually true, which you can argue you can sort of do for the others, but not really. You have to ask them what they think and so forth, and in general, it's in very pointed and specific ways. This is what I'm trying to make clear. What's the difference? Well, some people have the choice in how they act and how they behave and so forth. Some people, I hate to say this, but it's pretty much chance and they get what they get whether they like it or not. Okay, I am at the end of my time. I need to go and wrap things up. This is a Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I'm Kurt, and today is Wednesday, the 5th of January of 2022. It means tomorrow will be Thursday, the 6th of January of 2022, meaning we're coming ever closer to that first weekend of the new year. Well, second technically, but first real weekend of the new year, not counting New Year's Day, that New Year's Day holiday. Thank you for everyone who's been here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, on BitChute, on CloutHub, on Minds, that's minds.com, if that's where you happen to be visiting me from. Again, the subject for today has been choice or chance, and that's a question that I asked today. I don't see tomorrow's subject. I know I have it, so let me hunt it up real quick. It is... later looks different. And I'll get into that tomorrow, and you will be able to tune in to check that out. Hope you're doing well today. Hope everything is going well for you. Hope this new year is moving in ever better directions as you move on through it. And hopefully I will see you again on Thursday's edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This video is recorded on Wednesday, the 5th of January of 2022. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for watching this edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I hope you found it entertaining or instructional, or maybe both. If you want to see more from me, you can go to blogs.kpschubert.com. That's blogs.kpschubert.com. I am on Twitter, Parler, and Minds.com. My handle on each of those is @kpschubert. That's @kpschubert. I have a Rumble and a YouTube channel. They are the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels on Rumble and YouTube. I have a Facebook page. The Facebook page is Kurt's Religion and Politics as well. I am on Patreon. If you want to support me, that's one of the better places you can do that. And you will find me at Kurt's Religion and Politics on Patreon. I have a podcast. The podcast is podcasts with an S, .kpschubert.com. That's podcasts.kpschubert.com. I think you should be able to find me with relative ease on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify as well. The best way I find to do that is to look for Kurt's Religion and Politics. You can try to use the Daily Summation. I find that it doesn't work as well as a general rule, but you can always try that. I'm glad to have you aboard today, and hopefully we will see you again tomorrow.